Alright, so we're on to part two now of the Get to Know Me series, and that is going to be growing up. There's a bunch of other things I'm going to talk about later, like sports and my religious beliefs and other maybe controversial topics. But for right now, I'm just going to talk about growing up, and that's going to consist of preschool to, let's go with the end of high school. Okay, so growing up, we moved from the north side of Chicago when I was about 3 or 4, and we were able to go to Salt Creek preschool. Okay, so we went there, and shortly after that, we went to Jane Addams for elementary school, Winston Campus for junior high, and Palatine High School for the last 4 years. When I went to Jane Addams, we lived on 635 North Williams Drive. I'll never forget it. It was right behind Doug Lindbergh Park. Baseball was always going on there. So on the weekends, you'd always hear baseball games. We didn't have a backyard neighbor. We spent a lot of time in the park. We were throwing frisbee. We would, do crazy things like light tennis balls on fire and throw them at each other and stuff. We would throw Diet Coke and Mentos bombs all over the place. We were kind of destructive in that way, but it was relatively good, clean fun. And so anyways, when I went to Jane Addams, I noticed right away that it was a really diverse place. I could tell that from kindergarten on because we had a lot of different ethnicities in the classroom, and that was great that we were able to experience that from an early age because that allowed me to get to know people on an individual basis based on who they are as a person and not based on what they look like or where they're from and things of that nature. So I'm really happy that where we got put into place was schools that allowed us to see that kind of diversity, and I'm really thankful for that. Jane Addams was a great starting point for that. I went there from kindergarten to 6th grade, and even as early as 5th grade, I noticed that they had 2 ESL classes starting up, which was English as a Second Language. So that kind of gives you a little indication of kind of how the school was going in that direction. When I got to junior high, that's kind of when I saw it on a bigger scale. You had more schools that had put different people together. All the people that already went to Winston Campus from an early age, from kindergarten on, were at the school, and then you added in Jane Addams and maybe even a couple other ones I can't remember off the top of my head. But our classes had a bunch of different sections, and that's where we met all kinds of different new friends. And not to mention, you'd meet a lot more people because you had different people in your classes for science, different people for math, different people for gym. While I was in junior high, I did wrestling in 8th grade. I did other things like track and field, I think, in 7th grade. But wrestling is kind of the one thing that stands out to me. I didn't really want to wrestle, but someone talked me into it in 8th grade, so I had already missed 7th grade wrestling. But in 8th grade, I found out I was actually pretty good at it. I only lost to one kid, and I beat everybody else, and I mostly pinned them or made them cry or gave them a bloody nose, which was kind of funny, but not so funny, I guess. Here's actually a picture of the 8th grade tournament. I'm in 2nd place there. There was only 3 of us, but you still had to win I'm happy about that. Before I continue on to high school, I'm one of 4, so I'm the oldest sibling. I have Morgan under me, I have Abby next, and then I have Zach that brings up the end. So between us all, I think me and Zach are about 7 years apart, 6 years and some change, depending on the year. And we were all pretty spread out. I wouldn't say we were all super close growing up. It wasn't actually probably until we were all closer to drinking age that we really started to form some better bonds, which is kind of crazy to think about now because that's so many years wasted of not being super close to each other. I know Morgan and I butted heads a lot because we were the 2 oldest, and we were only 1 year of school apart, and we thought completely different. I was always somebody who was always down to talk to somebody, get to know somebody. It didn't matter who you were. I'd come up to you and talk to you. I'd make friends with you, and I'd be, I went out of my way to get to know people. And Morgan sometimes always thought that I was a little strange growing up, like, oh man, why are you so weird? And I'm just like, oh, I don't know. I didn't really have a good answer for her at the time as to why I, do what I do, why I am the way that I am when it comes to, outreach and things of that nature. Abby was 4 years younger than me, so we actually never even got a chance to be in school together other than elementary school. We just missed the cut when it came to high school. And Zach obviously was real young, so being 7 years younger than me, it wasn't until we were older that we really had a chance to bond. We bonded through things like skateboarding early on, when I was maybe 19, 20, and he was, 8th grade. He was starting to get into skateboarding and whatnot. But I do want to make one thing clear, and that's that when we did make friends, and there was a revolving door at my house growing up, 635 North Williams Drive, remember that address. If you drive by it and you're still in the Winston Park area, that's where we grew up. But one thing I want you guys to take away is that my parents were always super inviting. Anytime we brought a friend over, if they were a friend of ours, they were a friend of theirs. And it was not just hanging out after school, it was hanging out and then staying for dinner. And then staying for dinner turned into a sleepover. So, one thing, if I'll take away something from my childhood and my parents, it's that they instilled some principles in me that I can take to my own family, and that's just being, super loving and caring to anybody that walks through your door. Treat them like they're one of your own. Our house was always that revolving door. Being one of 4, there's so many kids that through sports and all these other things that are coming into the house. I probably know at least a dozen of each of my siblings' friends on a personal level, where I would have no problem hanging out with them today if I saw them randomly on the street at all. We'd sit down, grab some lunch, talk like we never left off. And so that's one thing that I loved about my household in particular. As far as high school goes, just some quick things that you might not have known. I played golf 3 out of the 4 years. My freshman year I didn't make the team. I tried really hard, but I blew it at the tryouts. And then I practiced super hard for the next year and I made it. And then by senior year I was actually one of the top guys. So other than that, as far as sports goes in high school, I really didn't care so much about them. I kind of wanted to just have fun with my friends. And that's what we did. We did a lot of stupid things with cars. We would go to McDonald's or Wendy's and grab the lunch trays, and then we'd put them in the back tires of the car or on the front tires, depending on what kind of car you had, and then hit the gas, and it would just start doing crazy burnouts in a circle and whatnot. Everybody had a Camaro. Did a lot of that stuff, a lot of duct taping, which for those of you who don't know what it is, I'm not necessarily proud of it, but I don't think it's that big of a deal. If you're trying to save your innocence a little bit, it's a good way to keep you from drinking and things like that. But what duct taping is you would go to a stop sign and you'd lay a piece of duct tape down face up, and when a car rolled over that duct tape with their wheel, it would catch and it would go and then you'd think that you had a flat tire. So they'd stop and get out, and we'd be hiding, and they wouldn't know where it came from, and it would just continue like that. They'd get down the street, then they'd stop again, they'd be like, what the hell? And it was just like, wait, how'd that go?
What we do here
all right, you get the idea.
Back,
anyways, a lot of fun stuff like that. And that was kind of how my life was put into play before I got into college. I think I wised up a lot between high school and college, and we'll talk more about that later, but growing up was a blast. I made a ton of friends that I still have to this day. He's actually my oldest friend I'm still friends with from preschool. That's early childhood. That's a little bit more about me growing up, and I'm going to come out with the rest of the series. I'm sorry it took me so long to get this one out. We've been kind of busy here. We're finishing up the house and whatnot, and there's just a lot of stuff going on. I'm bouncing between first and second shift right now, and I'm hoping to finish that up pretty soon, and then I can kind of get more back on track with this. But that was growing up. That was episode 2. Stay tuned for number 3. I'm not sure what the topic will be yet, so I hope you guys have a great rest of your week, and we will talk soon.